maybe tomorrow.
Hey everyone. So I struggled making heads or tails of this movie after coming out of the theater. It was a lot to take in. Among many things, this film deals with heavy themes of mental illness, the effects of abuse, and poverty. There are experts who claim that it is a realistic portrayal of mental illness, while others worry that it perpetuates further stereotypes. But there are many resources and articles online from professionals way more qualified than me if you're interested in studying Joker from that perspective. I, on the other hand, wanted to talk about something else that probably doesn't warrant as big of a conversation, but I found interesting nonetheless. It's how the movie paints the Joker as this heroic symbol in a way that's shockingly similar to the Batman. Both their rise to prominence, the path they take, are similar in a number of ways. And in a way, it reinforces why the Joker is the perfect rival to Batman. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the ideas in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and how they can be found in Todd Phillips' Joker. We can see how a corrupt and struggling society shaped their identities and gave rise to these symbolic figures. We can also examine key points along the hero's journey to see how these heroes can take that very same journey differently. Before we get started, I want to clarify that this is not a comparison or discussion of Heath Ledger's Joker to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. It's more of a comparison of Joaquin's Joker to Christian Bale's Batman. So as we dive deep into this discussion, spoilers ahead for both Joker and the Dark Knight trilogy. There was a specific scene during Joker that really drew my attention, and it was when Arthur appeared on the Murray Franklin show. And Murray asked Arthur, and I'm paraphrasing, "Are you doing this to inspire some kind of movement?" And Arthur responds, "Do I look like the kind of guy to inspire a movement?" The movement he's talking about, of course, is the poor and the lower class groups rising up against the elites. The movement begins with a clown killing 3 bankers, and then that would become a symbol later on for justice for the lower class groups. And although Arthur may have been the one to spark the movement, his involvement in it was actually very minimal, because the power of a symbol actually comes from the ideas that are interpreted from it, not necessarily from the person who created it.
I can't do that as Bruce Wayne. As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible.
Both stories showcase the significance symbols have on people and on culture. Symbols are used as shortcuts to create meaning, and in both cases, they start huge movements that change social structure. You have the clown in Joker and the bat in the Dark Knight trilogy. You often see these two symbols as opposite to each other, but Todd Phillips' Joker paints this idea that they are actually one and the same in fundamental meaning. Bruce Wayne's Batman was meant to inspire fear, but also justice and righteousness in a society riddled with corruption.
You really started something. Bad cops running scared, hope on the streets.
While Joker is equally representative of justice for the lower class groups who are fighting corruption amongst the Gotham City elites. Both characters equally attaining this godlike supernatural status at the end of their stories.
So you know about him?
Of course. Do you think he's coming back?
And we can see that the rise of these two characters come from a very similar place. Their identities as symbolic figures emerge out of this void that society had.
Who appointed the Batman?
We did. All of us who stood by and let scum take control of our city.
The laws and rules that govern society handcuff those who operate in it. Law enforcement can't properly prosecute criminals, police officers being paid off by the mob, and social services budgets being cut from top-down decision-making. And thus, Batman and Joker emerge out of this society in desperation.
And in their desperation, they turn to a man they didn't fully understand.
Todd Phillips' Joker became an icon needed to lead a movement, despite his actions being gruesome and coincidental. I go back to this idea that Gordon speaks to in The Dark Knight Rises about structures becoming shackles.
That's the point. Far out there when the structures fail you, when the rules aren't weapons anymore, they're shackles.
Society needed these eccentric figures to operate beyond the rules. In the end, Todd Phillips' Joker and Christopher Nolan's Batman emerged from a desperate social setting, became symbols that uphold similar meanings, and in the end, became praised in a godlike supernatural manner. They both follow a similar path. We can go even further to reinforce the point that Joker follows a similar path to Batman, even though the two are complete opposites to each other. And the best pathway template I can think of is Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. I imagine we have all heard about The Hero's Journey. It's a common topic discussed in school, where Joseph Campbell proposed that most hero stories follow this 12-stage template, and it goes like this. Different sources will have slightly different variations, but generally it will go as follows. Hero is in an ordinary world. They get the call to adventure. They refuse the call. They meet a mentor. Cross the threshold into the adventure. Goes through tests and trials. Approach the innermost cave of the adventure. Go through a major crisis. They claim the treasure or power. They go on the road back to the ordinary world, potentially face one last trial, and then finally return. This template can be applied to a lot of different films, not just superhero films, and it may work more smoothly for Batman Begins than it does Joker, but as I said earlier, Joker is seen as a hero by the end of his film, meaning he does go through some variant of the hero's journey. So we can use this 12-stage process to analyze Joker. I'm not going to be looking at all the stages, but there are certain ones I think are significant. First is the ordinary world. Both characters, before they adopted their new identities, struggled to find meaning. They were both lost in purpose. And this was largely the result of a childhood trauma. Arthur Fleck does not have much to care about other than his mother and his job. His personal goals are removed from the politics of the society that he lives in, even though it affects and oppresses him. This is surprisingly similar to Nolan's Batman, who begins at a similar stage in his story. Bruce lost his purpose after his parents passed away. He didn't involve himself in his family's business and the city that he grew up in. So they both start at similar stages in a corrupt Gotham City. Next is the call to adventure. In Batman Begins, it's when he meets Ducard, aka Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's offers him purpose. He offers him to seek meaning and bring a flower to a mountaintop. Joker does not really have this moment, but Arthur does envision an idealized version of himself. He envisions something that gives him purpose, and that's when he appears on the Murray Franklin show in his daydream. He wants to be a comedian. He wants to be like Murray. And this is the moment where they also both encounter their mentors. Then they both cross the threshold into adventure. Bruce starts training, and so does Arthur. Bruce starts training with the League of Shadows, and Arthur, probably doing it for many years now, but this is the first time we see in this movie that he starts taking more and more notes from other comedians. As for the trials and the innermost cave, Bruce realizes that the League of Shadows does not really uphold similar values as him. He breaks ties with them. He defeats them. He goes back to Gotham, and the innermost cave for him is literally the Batcave. Arthur confronts similar trials as well. He confronts and kills 3 bankers. Social services gets shut down. His mom goes through a panic attack. And he also confronts Thomas Wayne. And then the major crisis. Wayne Manor gets burned down. Arthur realized that his mom was lying to him his whole life. And then the last trial is when they face off against their mentors one final time, killing them in the act. All these similarities show how the line between hero and villain can seem awfully thin. Of course, there are a lot of nuances and details that actually make the two characters very different from each other. The biggest one, I think, is the willingness to take a life, where the Batman is not willing, the Joker is. This separates Bruce from the League of Shadows, but it also separates Arthur from the rest of society. Being a standalone movie with no real connection to any other Batman film, Joker makes you appreciate the relationship between the Joker and Batman that much more. It resonates so strongly with the ideas found in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and shows how truly perfect the Joker is and forever will be as Batman's arch nemesis.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
Thanks for watching. Hey everyone. So based on a few suggestions, I watched Joker a couple weeks ago, and I really wanted to talk about it, but I just didn't want to take the same approach that many others have before me. So I hope this analysis gives a somewhat refreshing look onto the movie. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow my social channels to keep up to date with everything. And I try to upload at least once every 2 weeks. So, as always, leave your suggestions. I do keep a note of all of them. It just takes time to consume the content. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Cheers.